Hey Dragon Slayers! So today's video is asking the question, if you have type 2 diabetes, are your beta cells gone forever? So many people with type 2 diabetes have been led to understand that the reason their glucose levels have climbed to critical levels is that their pancreas isn't making insulin anymore, or isn't making enough insulin. This is partially true, but it's also very misleading. The fact is that most people with type 2 diabetes, and certainly those with prediabetes, that is, people with insulin resistance, have high levels of insulin. Thus, the problem isn't that the beta cells are dying, but rather they simply can't produce enough insulin to keep the blood glucose levels under control. Extracted beta cells that are cultivated in isolated laboratory conditions provide an interesting model to help us understand what happens to beta cells with insulin resistance. When you are exposed to beta cells when you expose beta cells to a high level of glucose for a long period of time, they start to shut down. How do you restore them? Well, it's as simple as lowering the glucose. Of course, we're more complicated as an organism than just our beta cells. However, the same thing appears to happen when we look at people. A study in the UK found that type 2 diabetes patients with reduced beta cell function had a normalization of beta cell function by simply restricting carbohydrates and therefore glucose for 8 weeks. Another study even identified the specific proteins that allowed the beta cells in an insulin resistant person, that is, one with type 2 diabetes, to recover. However, the ability of beta cells to rebound may not be universal. In another study of type 2 diabetes patients on carbohydrate restricted diets, roughly half experienced the expected recovery, while the other half still required medication, albeit significantly less than before. With all these improvements have in common is that the beta cells of the pancreas are given a rest. By controlling carbohydrates, the beta cells are allowed to enjoy a reduced glucose condition that doesn't force them to work so hard. If you have type 2 diabetes and use insulin, it's possible, though unlikely, your beta cells are gone for good, or they may be waiting for that well earned rest before coming back to work. You won't know until you try. In the end, regardless of where the increase in insulin starts, insulin resistance is the result. The evidence is clear that too much insulin drives resistance at several parts of the body, including the muscle and fat tissue, which we'll explore more in a later video. Critically, the high insulin doesn't only arise from overt medical problems, but most stems from simple lifestyle. Unfortunately, as we'll see later, our current lifestyle is the perfect storm for hyperinsulinemia. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. There are other hormones that can also cause insulin resistance. Remember, insulin isn't just dancing alone. Other hormones are all lined up for the belle of the ball. In the next video, we'll be taking a look at the stress hormones, cortisol and epinephrine, and their effects on insulin resistance. Well, that's what I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps the channel out, guys. And remember that together, you and I will slay the dreaded diabetes dragon.